What's up guys, welcome back. Now in this video we're going to be talking about the Nintendo Switch Pro and the custom SOC that is rumored to be in development for the console, and of course a lot of the talk around the internet. Some people have speculated or possibly have been informed by other sources the reasoning behind why Nintendo is upgrading the Switch to the Switch Pro and Switch Mini in 2019. We're going to talk about that, and you're probably going to be very surprised once you see some of the things that we're going to talk about and reveal in this video. A lot of these things have obviously not been researched or talked about in the other camps, and we're also going to talk about some other technical things in this video that you may or may not be aware of yourself as well. So I do suggest you pay attention to all the information we're going to discuss, but the overall point of this video is to keep an open mind as to where Nintendo is going with the Nintendo Switch Pro, and I think you will agree by the end of this video. So the Switch Pro has been rumored by the Wall Street Journal to be coming in the second half of 2019. We all have heard about that. Of course, you've been following my channel. We've been having a lot of fun with the Switch Pro rumors ever since last year, so thank you all for your support, and it's going to continue until it's revealed. So I'm basically all hands on deck for the thing, so let's go ahead and keep talking about it. And so really what's been going on around here lately is that some people have been speculating or talking about how quite possibly the reason why the Nintendo Switch Pro and Mini are getting revealed or released in 2019 is quite possibly because of NVIDIA moving away from the 20 nanometer process in their fabrication to a 16 nanometer, or in fact the 12 nanometer that they currently are using for their newer graphics cards like Turing, for example. And quite possibly that the manufacturing plants simply are moving away from the 20 nanometer process and going to that smaller 12 nanometer process, which would then in turn lead to Nintendo having to upgrade the Nintendo Switch to a more modern fabrication process, to the 12 nanometer process which NVIDIA is using. Now while this sounds good on paper from what the talk and speculation is, that sounds good, right? That they would do that. However, there's something that quite possibly was missed in that speculation or that research that was done in coming up with that idea that Nintendo was doing it because of NVIDIA moving to that smaller fabrication process. Take a look at this.
This area is just rich with research. This is, of course, the ultimate AI. Today, we're announcing a brand new robotics computer. A brand new robotics computer. We're so proud of this one. It is the smallest computer our company has ever built. It's called the Jetson Nano. Here's the amazing thing about this little tiny thing. It's $99. The whole computer. And it's like, you know, if you use a Raspberry Pi and you just don't have enough computer performance, then you get yourself one of these. And it runs the entire CUDA X stack. It runs computer vision, it runs speech recognition, because it's architecturally compatible. Our company is that way. And so today we're opening several things. The first is the Isaac robot engine, basically the entire stack that's available on top of it to create robots. It creates 3 different robots: the Kaya robot, the Carter robot, and the Link robot. And one of them could use little Jetson Nano, the other one may use Xavier. We also created a robotics simulator so that the robots could learn how to be robots inside this virtual reality environment, and it's gonna look like real to the robot, so that when the robot is done, we take the artificial intelligence brain, we put it into the real physical robot, it sees the world, it perceives the world in the same way.
So that was from the GTC 2019 keynote with NVIDIA's CEO there. That is the GPU Technology Conference, not GDC, not for the developers, but their GPU Technology Conference that they have. And that was just last month for NVIDIA in March. NVIDIA revealed the Jetson Nano, a brand new AI computer that you can buy yourself on Amazon right now for $99.99, $100. And it's basically this mini computer that uses advanced AI, artificial intelligence, that NVIDIA wants to implement for the future in various different platforms that use advanced AI, including for a Linux environment, something as simple as a Raspberry Pi type device, all the way to a robot, for example, or other different peripherals and add-ons that can be used by developers and even by people like you and me. So this was a really cool breakthrough that NVIDIA announced just last month for release, and there's already been some reviews of the product on YouTube that already have the Jetson Nano developer kit for $99 and are using it. And NVIDIA announced in that conference that the Jetson Nano is the first of 3 different AI computers that they are releasing, and the Nano is the least expensive version of that. So what does this have to do with a 20 nanometer process and the Tegra X1 processor, you ask? Well, that's a good question, because the Jetson Nano is powered by the Tegra X1 processor. And here you see the full specs of the module, and these are verified by NVIDIA. It is powered by the Maxwell-based Tegra X1 processor. Of course, it has other things in there as well to help it with the advanced AI, but that is the core of what it's using for its processing power. So in regards to NVIDIA moving away from the Tegra X1 processor and perhaps discontinuing it and going to a different process, to Xavier and what have you, that does not look like to be the case, because if NVIDIA was in fact discontinuing the Tegra X1 processor and moving away from that fabrication process, they would not be so excited about revealing this brand new Jetson Nano to the public just last month. They wouldn't be putting so much research and development in this product in order to bring it to the consumer. And then from Nintendo's point of view, if NVIDIA told Nintendo that they were moving away from a Tegra X1 processor in only 2 years or so after the release of the Nintendo Switch, I don't think Nintendo would have gone with NVIDIA for that Tegra X1 processor in the first place, because that would then force Nintendo to release an upgraded console perhaps sooner than what they were ready, give them a deadline, and definitely a company that is trying to develop a console would not like that type of idea, being perhaps forced to upgrade their console just because that developer of the chip was going to discontinue it anyway. Nintendo would probably not even go with that chip in the first place and go with someone else. And when you compare what Nintendo did with the 3DS to the new 3DS, I believe you could buy the original 3DS model for the first 5 years that it was on store shelves. I think that was from 2011 to 2016 that they continued to sell the original 3DS model. A year after they released the new 3DS in February of 2015, you could still buy the original 3DS. They obviously didn't just discontinue that model as soon as they released the new 3DS. So even though Nintendo was going to be releasing a Switch Pro and Switch Mini in 2019, that does not mean they're going to be discontinuing the original Nintendo Switch quite possibly for another few years. They very well could continue making the original Nintendo Switch for a 4 to 5 year time period, just like the other consoles they did in the past. And they would have these different variations in different styles, different power ranges. Like the Switch Pro is more powerful and Switch Mini is a different form factor, focuses on more portable aspect, those kind of things. So again, due to the evidence provided, I do not think Nintendo is moving to a different fabrication process because of NVIDIA moving away from the Tegra X1 processor, because basically that is not true. NVIDIA is not moving away from the Tegra X1 processor. They're still using it in brand new devices that they just revealed last month. So with that out of the way, what about the custom SOC of the Nintendo Switch? What could possibly Nintendo be using? Now that is a very interesting question, because they could be using basically anything. And that may sound kind of strange to you, because you may think that there's kind of a limited amount of chips that Nintendo could be using from NVIDIA, right? You have the Parker chip, you have the Xavier chip, and you even have some other future chips that NVIDIA is working on that are beyond Xavier that they could be modifying and using custom for the Nintendo Switch. But when I say that anything could be used, that is actually true. And here's the reason why. What you're seeing right here is the Yuzu emulator that is running games like Super Mario Odyssey, Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, and other games like that on the Switch at higher resolutions and are now fully playable on PCs that have no architectural similarities to the Nintendo Switch. And this emulator was developed by, I believe, less than 10 guys in the last year and a half or so, and they are the same people who developed the Citra emulator for the Nintendo 3DS. And when you create emulators, you have to use your own code from scratch, or else if you are using Nintendo's own SDK code, that is illegal, because that can only legally be used by Nintendo for their own games. So this is an emulator they built from scratch in less than 2 years, and it is running at nearly full speed for these games on PC. So the custom chip that Nintendo could be using for the Switch Pro could actually be something completely different than what they're using for the original Nintendo Switch, and could still withhold the backwards compatibility on it due to that Tegra X1 processor being now over 4 years old, and the technology of that chip is very well known. Obviously that chip has been thoroughly hacked. It's a very common common language that it uses in its code and in how it's developed. So while I'm not saying that it is not using NVIDIA or it's using something else, I'm not saying that, but what I am saying is that the chip could be surprising in that it is technologically possible that it could be using something completely different than what the original Switch is based on and still get the job done with emulation from the original Nintendo Switch. And Nintendo may want to do that because of that Tegra X1 processor being so easily hacked. They may not want to have anything to do with that chip at all. Maybe not anything even architecturally similar at all to that chip either. They may not even want to have that. As long as they can get the games running in emulation, they may in fact do that with a different type of chip. And if they did do that, this would not be the first time that a handheld device had a completely different architecture and ran the previous console in backwards compatibility mode. And the console that did that was the PlayStation Vita. It ran some of the original PlayStation portable games in backwards compatibility mode on the PlayStation Vita with a completely different CPU and GPU on it. The PlayStation Vita runs an ARM Cortex A9 processor and a PowerVR GPU, which is completely different than what the PSP was using in 2004. Of course, it didn't run those UMD discs that the PSP had. It was able to run the digital download games on a PlayStation Vita. So again, what I'm doing here in this video, guys, is putting this out there as information, as food for thought to consider when thinking about what Nintendo could be doing with the Switch Pro. It doesn't necessarily have to be all cut and dry, you know, this has to be this way and this must be that way, and NVIDIA is doing this, so that means Nintendo has to do that. No, that isn't the case necessarily. What I'm bringing to your attention is that anything could be possible in this custom chip that Nintendo is using. So then we go back to the beginning of the video here. Why is Nintendo upgrading to the Switch Pro in 2019? Why? Well, the Wall Street Journal kind of said why back in October 4th, 2018, when they originally talked about how Nintendo is going to be releasing a new Nintendo Switch in 2019, the second half of 2019. If we go back to that article and take a look at it again, you'll see exactly what they are saying here seems to be the case. So remember, this was from October 2018 when the Wall Street Journal first talked about this. They said, Nintendo plans to release a new version of its Switch video game console next year, 2019, to maintain the sales momentum of the device, according to suppliers and others with direct knowledge of the plan. Sales of the Switch, introduced in March 2017, are still solid but are no longer delivering the favorable surprises that marked the machine's first year on the market. Nintendo shares, which rose sharply last year, have trailed the broader stock market this year. The move to update the Switch suggests the Kyoto, Japan company is moving quickly to ensure its flagship product doesn't lose competitiveness. Okay, they say it right here in the article that Nintendo is looking to remain competitive in the marketplace. We talked about this last year as well, and I think a lot of people kind of forgot about this or dismissed it and didn't think that word competitiveness necessarily meant actually being competitive. You know, I don't know what people were thinking, but basically we talked about this before. PlayStation 5 is coming, the next Xbox is coming. We have some other competitors also entering into the market with Google with their streaming service. There's competition out there that can take the attention away from Nintendo. Having a new Switch, maybe a more powerful Switch that can play the same games as far as ports are concerned from these other upcoming consoles, that would help the Switch remain competitive for years to come. If they don't do that, obviously that might hinder their competitiveness, quote unquote, because Nintendo has their first party software down pretty good on the Switch. So competitiveness would mean the hardware itself to be more compelling to a wider range audience, basically the more core gamers, which is what the second Wall Street Journal article said last month. And there's actually even more information from that Wall Street Journal article that was posted by a user who had access to their article, their paid subscription, that was posted on Twitter, and I got the screen caps for that article. So if you look at that article a little closer from the Wall Street Journal, we can see a little bit better that they are talking to developers and people who have actually played these new consoles. If you recall the other article from Eurogamer, they listed sources that were close to Nintendo. They did not say they talked to people who actually played the consoles. They said they talked to people who just were close to Nintendo. So the actual only really credible source here is the Wall Street Journal as far as more detail is concerned. Even though I'm not dismissing what Eurogamer said, if you're going to look at which one has more information, it looks to be the Wall Street Journal has the more concrete information because they got this information directly from people who have actually played the Switch Pro and Switch Mini and have actually seen these consoles in action. So they can kind of hint, at least obviously to a certain point, to where these consoles are heading. So let's take a look at that context again from the second article of the Wall Street Journal. Okay, let's take a look at this. So we're going to skip to the second paragraph of this first part here, where it says one version, talking about the new Switch, will have enhanced features targeted at avid video gamers, although it won't be as powerful as Sony's PlayStation 4 Pro or Xbox One X from Microsoft, according to parts suppliers and software developers for Nintendo who have access to a prototype of the machine. So again, very clearly here, they compare it only to the PlayStation 4 Pro and Xbox One X, that it won't be as powerful as those two consoles. So obviously that doesn't tell you quite much about where you can expect the power level to be. We just know that it won't be as powerful as the PlayStation 4 Pro and Xbox One X. They don't mention a PlayStation 4 base model or Xbox One base model though. So you know what they say about your first instinct when you see something on paper, then what's the first thing you think about? So the first instinct that a lot of people had when they saw this information was that, well, if they're comparing it to a PlayStation 4 Pro and Xbox One X, that it's not as powerful as those two, but they're not mentioning PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, maybe just maybe this new Switch is as powerful as a PlayStation 4. Now, that is the first instinct that a lot of people had when they first saw this information. I saw a lot of people saying this when they saw this. Now let's take a look at the second part of this article that was posted in a picture on Twitter underneath where Mochizuki posted the link to his original Wall Street Journal article. Now this second paragraph here sets up the context for the third paragraph of this article. Now this is where a lot of people got confused on, but if you look at the context here of the second paragraph, things might seem a little bit more clear. Here it says, Nintendo suppliers and game developers have been talking with their investors about the new Switch machines for several months. People who have used the devices say they aren't just similar looking new versions with a higher or lower performance. So that's very clear, right? People who have used the devices, they're saying that they're not just more powerful versions that just look similar to the same console. And then it reiterates that in the next paragraph by saying you would be wrong to think the enhanced version, the Switch Pro, is similar to what Sony did with PS4 Pro. And the other one, the Switch Mini, is just a cheap alternative that looks very similar to some past handheld machines, say Sony's PlayStation Vita. So the reason why we're going over this again is because I don't think it was clear enough to people who read the article. I do think there was a lot of confusion here, but it looks like very clearly here that developers are saying that this new Nintendo Switch is not just an enhanced version of the Nintendo Switch. Basically, it's not just like a new 3DS is what they're saying, because that is what a new 3DS is from the old 3DS. So basically it is a more powerful 3DS Pro. Basically it looks the same pretty much with some enhancements, some differences to it, and it's more powerful, but it's basically like a PlayStation 4 Pro for Nintendo. That's what the new 3DS is. And there's nothing wrong with that if that is the case. I'm not saying it may not be like that, but the common thing that you're seeing from people talking about this new Switch online is that they are expecting it to be basically like a new 3DS, and a new 3DS would be something expected, right? Something that you would think Nintendo would do, or something you would think Sony would do with an enhanced console, basically a PlayStation 4 Pro. Because an enhanced version similar to PlayStation 4 Pro, they said you would be wrong to think that the new system is just like that. They're actually going to be something that quite possibly could be surprising, which is also what Mochizuki said in another quote, that these new devices, both devices, they would be surprising. So the point I'm trying to make is that what Eurogamer has said and what other people have said in comparison to this information here sounds too much like something you would expect Nintendo to do. That's all I'm trying to say here, is that basically you would expect a marginally more powerful Switch from Nintendo if it's something similar to a new 3DS, right? That's what you would expect. But what they're saying is that you would be wrong to expect that kind of thing with this new Nintendo Switch. you'd be wrong to think it's just like what Sony did with the PlayStation 4 Pro. All I'm saying is that you need to look at all the information for yourself and make your own mind about this new Nintendo Switch Pro coming out. Make sure you look at all the information available and to not dismiss any of the possibilities. And from what the Wall Street Journal has said, with all the quotes I put together here for you guys to see for yourself, the common theme is Nintendo is trying to surprise its users with these new consoles. So if you're just expecting your typical upgrade as far as a marginal power boost and it looks exactly the same, that kind of thing, they're trying to tell you that is not exactly what Nintendo's trying to do here. So I'm excited to see what these consoles look like. I'm excited to see how more powerful they are. I'm excited to see the whole thing. I'm sure you guys are as well, because I've seen this a lot going on lately with forums, YouTubers, websites. A lot of people are trying to tell you, the consumer, the user, the fan of Nintendo and the Switch and what have you, what to expect from the Switch Pro and Switch Mini. But when you look at it closely for yourself, you can see that quite possibly we should be expecting the unexpected from Nintendo. And Nintendo's been going through a lot of changes themselves with their upper management, with their new president, and they've already been making some changes externally already that you could see for yourself the difference already with Nintendo in 2019. So will Nintendo surprise everybody with the Switch Pro and Switch Mini? We will have to wait and see, but if you're going by what the Wall Street Journal says from their information, talking to developers, they're saying that Nintendo is trying to surprise people with these consoles. So basically, I hope the surprise is worth waiting for. Alright guys, let me know what you think about all this in the comment section. And if you did enjoy this video, please hit the like button, subscribe for more, and I'll talk to you very soon in the next video. Have a great day.